Senator Feingold, President Obama said at his last news conference that waterboarding is torture. Does he then have an obligation to prosecute those who were involved with it, either authorizing it or doing it themselves to prisoners?
Well, the President did say clearly at his press conference that waterboarding is torture. I say, therefore, it's against the law. And therefore, those who formulated the policy, at a minimum, should be held accountable. Now, I think it's appropriate that he's letting the Attorney General, Mr. Holder, take a look at this and determine if that is, in fact, their conclusion. But I do not believe people can say, well, they were just offering their valid legal opinions. They are not valid legal opinions. They are not reasonable legal opinions. They are outrageous legal opinions. And I certainly, for one, hope that there is serious consideration of prosecution in some of those cases.
Do you think Jay Bybee should be impeached?
I don't believe he should be in the office he's in. I would prefer to see him resign. I would not rule out impeachment. As a senator, my job is to review an impeachment by the House as a juror, just as I did in the case of President Clinton. So I'm not going to prejudge the situation, but on the face of it, I certainly would understand why any member of the House would say, wait a minute, maybe we ought to consider articles of impeachment if he does not resign. What he did here was truly against American law and against American values, and I question why somebody like that should be a federal judge for life.
So that's impeachment, of course. That doesn't go to the issue of prosecution, which you said you would support.
I said that I think the Attorney General ought to take seriously the issue of whether these individuals should be prosecuted. I'd like to hear his view first, and I certainly would want to listen to it, but I would be surprised if the Attorney General did not come to the conclusion that somebody needs to be prosecuted for putting in place something that the President himself has said is torture and is therefore illegal.
Would you sign on to the letter that the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Conyers, the New York Congressman Nadler, are sending to Attorney General Holder, calling for the appointment of a special counsel to investigate and prosecute Bush administration officials?
I'd be very open to that. I want to see the letter. That is one of the options that I agree with. I potentially agree with prosecutions. I agree with the idea of the Truth Commission, and I potentially would support a special prosecutor. I want to see the letter.
What do you think of Baltasar Garzón, the Spanish judge who led the charge for the indictment against Augusto Pinochet, going after Bush administration officials?
This is what happens when we don't have accountability in our own country. I think we should have accountability here. I think we should have appropriate prosecutions here, and the Spanish should wait. But, of course, other countries aren't going to wait forever if we don't show any concern about the lawlessness that affected our own country. But I do think that it's our responsibility, not the responsibility of the Spaniards.
On the issue of state secrets, you've written and spoken about this. President Obama has invoked them several times, continuing the tradition of the Bush administration. Where has he invoked them, and what do you think about this?
Well, I'm disappointed in this part. Now, overall, I think the President Obama, has made enormous progress in terms of the rule of law. We cannot take away from him the fact that he stopped the torture practice, he stopped the detainee abuses in Guantanamo, he has pledged to close Guantanamo, he has opened up Freedom of Information Act, so most areas are very positive. But this is an area of great disappointment. Surprising that the President is using the state secrets privilege in a way that reminds us exactly of the Bush administration. Now, his excuse the other night was that, well, these cases were pending and they hadn't had time to review it. So I'm expecting good things from the President in changing this policy. One of the potential effects of this is in the most recent case. This may make it so we lose an opportunity to question the illegal warrantless wiretapping program that President Bush put into place. Now, we have legislation that would change this, that would make it so that the judge could actually review this material in open court, closed court, rather than just rely on government affidavits. And the President indicated a willingness to look at that. I'm hoping that happens, and I hope they stop the sort of automatic use of the state secrets privilege. It's been probably the biggest disappointment in the rule of law area since Obama was inaugurated, in an area where he has actually done quite well.
Explain that last case invoking state secrets.
Well, I can't talk about the specifics of it other than to say that one of the things that could happen as a result of this litigation is that the plaintiffs may be able to question whether they can be prosecuted because of an illegal warrantless wiretapping program. So it goes to the very core of a question that I want resolved, which is my belief that the President, under Article 2 of the Constitution, lawlessly ignored the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which is the law, the only law, the exclusive law, allowing this kind of wiretapping, and they went ahead and did it on their own anyway. So this is an opportunity in litigation to get at that core constitutional question. State secrets privilege could prevent us from having that opportunity.
Wiretapping, torture. Do you think that President Bush, that Vice President Cheney should also be prosecuted?
I have not come to a conclusion on that. I want to think about it. I want to see what the Attorney General has to say, and I want to see where the evidence leads.
And what do you think of President Obama saying we have to look forward, not back?
I understand that in general that's the right thing. Throughout the campaign, I said our first priority is to get our economy back in place, and our other priority is to make sure we change our international reputation and policy. But I said, but we cannot ignore the third priority, which is accountability for things that have happened in the past. And I am troubled when the President says, I just want to look forward. That's not the way we do things in our society. We have to, just like they did in South Africa, just like we did when we realized the mistakes we made with Korematsu and the internment of Japanese Americans, you can't just sweep it under the rug. And I know the President cares about this, and I understand the political dynamics, but there is a way here, through a Truth Commission and other steps, to make sure that people know that we understand a terrible mistake was made and that Americans will not do it again. So I would like to see the President find a way to speak more in terms of what kind of accountability we can have for past misdeeds.
I know that you have to go give the speech. One last question around the issue of health care. Do you support single-payer health care?
I do. I always have. I don't think there's any possibility that that will come out of this Congress. And so for people to simply say that's this way or nothing are looking at something that can't happen now. But I would love to see it. And I believe the goal here is to create whatever legislation we have in a way that could be developed into something like a single-payer system.
Why can't it happen, since polls show most people are for it?
I guarantee you, I know the members of Congress, and it's not going to pass in this Congress. So there's certain things that can't happen right away, and this is one of them, but I do support a single-payer idea.
Why do they resist it?
Well, I think they're afraid of the criticisms that it's a big government bureaucracy program. You know, Paul Wellstone, before he died, started talking about having a guaranteed health care for all Americans, but giving the states flexibility to do it their own way. That's not a single-payer system, but it achieves many of its same goals. I think that's another way to get at this, and Paul Wellstone was even talking about it.
Senator Feingold, thanks so much for joining us. Wisconsin Democrat